Good morning, everybody. It is Cowboy. We got Ben Kelleran here for Kelleran's Korner. Take a look in the description. You're going to see a couple of things. First of all, our paid sponsor, Algo Factory. We have a free algo for you. Click on that. Give us a real name, fake name. We don't care. We'll send you the algo immediately and let you know when we have some other items coming as well. And you have Ben Kelleran's work. I believe, Ben, I put your Substack in there. So definitely everybody go over there, look at Ben's Substack. If you're not following Ben's work and you're into markets of any kind, but especially if you're into energy markets, then you're missing the boat. Ben is just a big brain, knows the stuff inside and out. Ben, how you doing today, sir?
Doing pretty good. Been an interesting week on my end, but I think we're getting close to some good news I've been waiting for a long time. So it's a lot of stuff going on, though. And the last week has been very interesting as far as current events. You have lots of stuff going on with Fed. Sounds like rate cuts are coming. It's a lot of stuff changing, and we'll see where it goes. But I have this feeling in my gut. I don't know if you get this every once in a while, but it feels like something big is kind of on the horizon. Something's coming that's going to be a major change. I don't really have more of a gut feel than that. It just seems like we're at a point where there's going to be a lot of changes coming. So,
Oh, for sure. I mean, whether or not those changes are good or bad, in my business, we like change. So, it's change is change, right? So we can make money, things go up. We can make money if things go down. So that's how chaos is unfortunately profitable for us. But yeah, I'm with you. And the gut feeling is there. It's just hard to say. It's hard to say what it's going to be. I would like for that change to be that we're more economically independent from other countries such that we can work together with the powers around the world and do commerce. But I don't know, maybe I'm being too hopeful. What do you think?
yeah, I think there's, how do I put this? The US has gotten into a state that I've talked about before where the economy is basically hyper financialized, and what you see going on now is kind of it spreads into every aspect of kind of day-to-day life and what's going on in the world. But the way I kind of look at what has happened is the US, like, even if you go straight to how markets function, where people talk about recession being bad for the markets, and that's like gonna cause like a crash or pullback, whatever you want to call it. You kind of look at what's happened with the passive indexing and money flows, and I think markets are probably something that would have to decline first before you actually get like a massive recession. Where, like, if you go and look and do the digging on how much money flows into the S&P every 2 weeks just from retirement funds, and how we kind of turn the S&P or these big indices into, I guess, the social utility program is the way I'll put it. If you have any of those things go down, like, shit starts to go sideways on tax receipts and other things. But if you have some of these things where it's like, okay, we're getting layoffs from AI and all this other stuff, and people can't contribute to their 401ks, and so that means less money going to the market, so that means the market's going to go down. It's like this whole feedback loop where if you start to actually, the best way to play is it's a Jenga tower where you start pulling out too many blocks at the same time, it's gonna fall over. So I kind of look at it as I understand why people are bearish. I just look at it and wonder what's going to be kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, you know?
Yeah. Soft landing, hard landing. I think it's going to be a landing. Rather than do you listen to Alex Krainer at all?
I do. Whenever I see him pop on podcast, I try and listen to a couple of his every once in a while. So yeah.
Yeah, but I'm about the same. Like I've been listening to him more lately. I like that he is relatively dispassionate, you know. I prefer to approach markets in that manner. I find that attaching too much emotion to markets is just never a good thing. And the way he puts it is ultimately, like the U.S. has a lot more tools at our disposal to manage that kind of thing, as compared to a place like Europe right now, where Europe doesn't have, they don't really have any kind of resources at their own disposal. They were extracting a lot of resources from Africa, but I'm made to understand that a lot of the a lot of the colonies that they once had in Africa are no longer at their disposal. So Europe is kind of dying on the vine. In fact, did you hear about the layoffs over in Germany?
Is it another round? I know their economy's actually been shrinking for the last like several years since the whole Ukraine thing. Basically, since they got cut off from Russian gas. But I,
Pretty much, yeah.
yeah,
That's the reason. Well, that and they got cut off from Russian gas, which of course is allowing them to produce an affordable price, right? But then there's this. Give me just one moment. So you have 125,000 industrial job cuts in 6 weeks. So put that in perspective. If the U.S. got hit at the same rate, that's like 300,000 factory jobs, or roughly 500,000 total jobs gone in a month and a half. Picture every factory worker in a state like South Carolina unemployed. It's like that scale. Recent layoffs announced in Germany, auto and auto supplier layoffs over the past 12 months, about 111,400 jobs. Steel and heavy industry, 11,000, which is 40% of the workforce. Rail and transport layoffs, 35,000 total. I mean, there's a bunch. There's a lot of, I could go down the list here. But yeah, it seems that, Germany, I mean, they were the economic, they were the production engine of Europe. So now they stopped buying Russian gas. They shut down their nuclear power plants. They can't afford to produce anything at an affordable rate. And it appears that they are going to start producing things, maybe in China or with China and the U.S. V, good morning.
Hey,
How
good
are you,
morning,
sir?
guys. Good morning, Ben. How are you?
doing pretty good. We were
Awesome.
just ranting about the state of the hyper-financialized economy, what's going on in Europe and Germany with layoffs, and I was about to say cheap energy is a hell of a drug when you look at like European manufacturing capacity, and you combine that with tariffs and VAT taxes and other stuff. There's, I mean, they had, it seems like a pretty good thing going for a while, and then they are determined to go the windmills and green circus and import infinity immigrants route. So that's kind of
Yeah.
where they're taking this thing. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see where it goes. But I think it's going to be a circus for Europe over the next 5-10 years.
It's a circus now.
Well, I'm saying it's going to get even worse. That's my kind of prediction on that. So,
Ooh, sorry. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly, man. It's going to get a lot worse. And how this is going to be getting played out, it's going to be very, very interesting, to say the least. I mean, we all see the warning signs, right? It's just, you know what it is? It's like we know the engines. We're like going in an airplane, right? We're watching an airplane. The engines are on fire, and it's crashing. What we're doing right now is we're just all debating how and where is it going to crash? Where is it going to crash? Is it going to hit the bottom of the mountain? Is it going to go into the rice paddy? Is it going to go right to the ocean? Is it going to disintegrate on the what's going to? How's this damn thing going to implode? Right, and that's where we're at right now, man. We're just watching this. We're just trying to figure out how this thing's going to crash.
well, the smart people in Europe are putting on their parachutes and heading for the exit. I've talked to a couple of people that have been thinking about for a while or have recently got out of Europe or the UK, and it's just, I mean, I understand wanting to stay in a certain place, and I kind of look at the US as kind of the last hope for Western Civ, if you want to call it that. But so I don't think I'll ever leave. But if things get bad enough in certain places, you eventually just have to say it's just not worth it, right? It's not worth living around like certain groups of people. It's not worth dealing with bureaucrats that are going to be trying to enslave you, or, I mean, trains your kids. I mean, take your pick of all the insane agendas that have been kind of thrust upon people in the West over the last 10, 15, 20 years. But I think we'll see where it goes. I just look at some of these changes, and I think where you hit peak insanity, where a bunch of society is waking up and saying, okay, these people are actually nuts. And you see some of that with the reaction to the whole Charlie Kirk thing. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see Sam Hyde's like 45-minute or hour-long video he put up in response.
No,
But
what did he say?
you should at least watch the first 2 minutes of it. Like, I understand like an hour is like everyone's time is valuable, all this stuff. At least watch the first 2 minutes and it'll probably hook you really good. But
Okay,
Let me see if I can. I'm gonna pull
Cowboy,
it up if I
pull it
can.
up. We can watch. We'll
Yeah.
put the 2 minutes up.
we can get the two minutes going. But basically,
Is it on a? Where is it at? Ben, is
I
it
would just
YouTube?
look up Sam Hyde on Twitter. It was
On Twitter. All right.
yeah, it was on there. So, but basically, I think what people are realizing is how insane the leftist types are, where
Yeah.
there's a huge chunk of the population that will celebrate someone's death who is basically a stand-up guy. It's not like you're celebrating some like child
Evil, yeah.
molester,
You
like
could
serial
disagree
killer
with
type.
Charlie Kirk on a political level, but you can't say that this guy was an evil scumbag. He wasn't. He believed what he believed, and he was killed for it.
Yeah. All right, let's see if this.
The thing about Charlie was that he was reasonable, and he was a reasonable voice.
He's a moderate.
He's a moderate. They don't like moderates.
Yeah, it's funny because when I'll let you fire it up here in a sec, but one thing I'll add to that is when you kind of listen to some of the stuff is like every time I would be disagreeing with some of the stuff he said, it would be because I was further to the right than he was, right? And so the fact that they're celebrating what I would call like the whole classical liberal whatever, the kind of culture and politics that would have worked 50, 60 years ago, the fact that they're celebrating that guy's death kind of shows you where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fucking
I mean,
crazy.
look, somebody said it. There was a quote yesterday. I don't know who it was. You can convert hundreds of men by playing against their biases, but you can only convert like one at a time by using logic. And Charlie was actually using logic and getting them one at a time. And it's just that his voice got so loud. And I think that's the problem. If you convert somebody with their biases, then it's not going to last. Like, they're not truly converted. They'll just act the way that you want them to act. But he actually was changing minds. And
young minds too. That was a big part of it, where he's going after, not going after, but like the college kids was his focus group, his target audience. Like, right, no one cares if you're getting boomers to stop watching MSNBC because most of them are going to be gone in a decade or two. But if you can change attitudes on important issues for the younger generations, right, that has impact for decades.
Well, so they made a martyr of him. They're just amplifying his voice.
Yeah.
So, and that's what has to happen is that, what, Ben Shapiro is going to replace him? Like, okay.
Well, you got to understand the bigger play here is it's really interesting, right? Turning Point was making about $85 million a year since 2023 or 4. And then you add that multiplier in terms of a valuation type thing. And you're valuing Turning Point and all its assets and what it owns close to almost $500 million. That's number one. Number two, Kirk on his last couple of weeks of him being alive and the last few months of him being alive on this planet, he was starting to turn the corner. He was starting to notice what was happening with Israel and the Zionists and what Netanyahu and his ilk have been doing to Gaza and have been doing to Qatar and have been doing to like pretty much all the shenanigans that they've been pulling off, in that region. And he started to call them out. Now, you got to understand, folks, that whole entire trade, can Israel allow one of the most prominent conservative voices that has the ear of evangelical Christianity, quote unquote, that has the ear of many of the people that are on the right, many of the people that are these young conservatives, can they afford this guy to have a bad opinion about Israel? Because what is that Israel relationship with the United States worth? Well, it's worth about anywhere between $8.5 to $10 billion a year that we know of. Will you kill a guy for $8.5 to $10 billion? Absolutely,
easy.
Absolutely.
Well, I think you can argue it's even more than that, because if the U.S. basically stops backing up,
definitely more than that. Absolutely.
My point is it's existential for them. If the U.S. stops backing up Israel, I was listening to a podcast. What's his name? Jose El Nino. He's very, very smart and an interesting character, but he pointed out that since 2022 October 7th, if 2022 or whatever, when all this stuff started, Israel's bombed 9 different countries,
Jesus.
right? And so when you look at that, it's like, okay, you basically pick out every surrounding country except for like the Saudis and a couple others, right? And they've targeted everyone, right? So you kind of, right, you can try and put a number on it, or you can just look at it as it's existential. If they lose the backing of the U.S., Israel's toast, right? I think.
Well, I think everybody, even those who used to back them, turned their back on them after after a lot of recent events, after Charlie Kirk, after what's been going on with Gaza the last year or so. Like everybody's kind of done with them. So I think that they're in a moment of desperation. And I read something, I didn't verify this, but I read this morning that there are 250 Congresspeople in Israel today, U.S. Congresspeople in Israel today.
Lovely.
But hey, man, I
Wow.
guess you got to go visit your constituents.
Yeah. Exactly.
You gotta go pay the master and bend over and take it. I mean, what they had Rubio, up on the wall wearing the yarmulke. Like, when can we be done?
Right.
Can we just be done?
Can we stop placing hands on the fake temple wall? Okay. Can we stop doing that? It's not the temple of David, guys. It's not the temple of Solomon. It's not the temple of anything. It's Fort Antonia. Excuse me. It's Fort Antonia. That is the wall. That is Fort Antonia. It is not the temple wall. And people go there. I'm going to go to the temple wall, and I'm going to put dildos all over the wall, all over it, so our politicians can go there and suck off the wall. That's what needs to happen. Because that's
it's pretty much what's going on already.
Correct.
All right, let's see this video. Fire it up, and you guys will be hooked after 2 minutes, and then you can watch the rest later.
This is you. This is your sister, your wife, your daughter. But this right here is you. This is your sister, your wife, your daughter. This is you. This is your sister, your wife, your daughter. But this is you. And this is their reaction when you are killed. This is the joy they feel when your sister is raped, when your children are castrated, brainwashed to hate you.
Right.
This is their ecstasy when the floor of the subway car is awash in your blood. This is you. Make no mistake, that is a symbol. That is you. But this won't last long. They can't help themselves because they're so ugly and so low that the only joy they can experience, the only good that they can envision is to take something beautiful or innocent down to their level. And when they can't do it, the next best thing is blood. This is Charlie's family. And these are his children who will never be able to hug their dad and grow up with a murdered father. And these are the people who smugly revel in this, and they won't stop with just Charlie.
No, correct.
The boats are burned. There's nobody coming to help. The barbarians are at the gate. This is the fall of ancient Rome that we are living through currently. And what happens in the next 2 weeks is going to determine the future of mankind. That's not hyperbole. That's just how it is. A few notes.
I think it's maybe a little hyperbole, but the point is, you get like the message, and you see people celebrating like a death like that. It's it just kind of shows you where we are, and the kind of talk of civil war and America splitting apart, all this other stuff, I don't think has to happen. But at the
I don't
same
think
time, I don't share this, like, the philosophical, like, I don't feel like we have to share a country with people that think abortion's a great idea. It's baby sacrifice. And right, you should be able to trans your kids and all these other different agendas. Like, you have to live
Yeah, we're two
near,
different countries at this point.
I mean, it's just all these things where it's like, look, there are certain differences you can get past where it's like, hey, maybe I think lower taxes is a good thing, or like all that stuff is like small potatoes versus should we be allowing some of these different things to happen and play out where we're not going to punish certain things or certain actions. Like, I think the guy who did the train stabbing, they're now like trying to say he's mentally unfit to stand trial. It's like, I don't care what the legal system says. Like, I don't
Doesn't
care.
matter.
Like, he should already be gone, right? We shouldn't have to wait. It should be something that all this stuff gets carried out almost immediately when it's that obvious, right? The dude's guilty.
Yeah.
And if you put him back on the streets, you're just punishing the average citizen at that point, right?
Yeah.
These people are human bioweapons, right? If they're like committing acts like that, right? There's no place in society for them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the fact that the magistrate judge, quote unquote, which you don't even have to be a lawyer to be a magistrate judge in some of these states, if not all of them.
I'm gonna go become a magistrate judge. That's what I'm gonna do.
That's what I want to do too. So they, the one in this particular case, I don't know if it's all 14 of the prior arrests from the guy who cut Irina's throat. But she is a managing director, and I believe has an ownership stake in the mental facility to which all of these people are being sent when they're considered, not mentally able to handle a trial or whatever the term is they, use for that. So it's just like, oh, we got another customer. No, he's not guilty. Put him in our facility. We'll make some money. Like that's how I see it. If that's not a conflict of interest, I don't know what is. And it just stinks, man. These people, they have no scruples. Some of the celebrations I'm seeing about Charlie Kirk's death are literally like, and V, I'm a skeptic when it comes to religion, but man, I've never seen anything more demonic in my life, like the way these people are. I don't remember seeing anybody celebrate, anybody's death like this. I've never seen a death celebrated like this.
Like, no, I mean either.
Ever.
I think it's incredibly evident. 2020 was the year that the complete bifurcation of American society occurred. From the scamdemic through the Trump's first, the close of Trump's first term to where we are today, we are so irreconcilably different. There's literally two countries that exist that we call the Union of the United States of America. It's not a union anymore. There are people that right now I can't sit across to and talk in a logical manner without them even having any sort of a counterpoint in a logical and civil discourse kind of way. People, I had a buddy, Aaron Clary. I got to get Aaron back on. And he's
hilarious.
Aaron is hilarious. I haven't had him on in a while. I gotta reach out to Aaron and be like, Aaron, you gotta come back on. We got to talk. Aaron made a point. He goes, he would say things like, what we're going to end up as a country. It's like, there's a lot of things we're talking about: balkanization, civil war, and then the other aspect of it is the good guys come riding in on their horses. They're going to rescue all of us, guys. They're going to rescue all of us. And all the bad actors are going to get arrested and go to Guantanamo Bay and all the other bullshit. And I'm not holding my breath for any of that. What Aaron said is very, very succinct. He said, we could end up like Brazil. And if you really fucking think about it, we could end up somewhere between a Brazil and a Colombia in the 80s. Gus used to joke all the time saying, hey, we're going to turn to Narcos season 2. Right. And if anybody hasn't seen Narcos on Netflix, season 2 is basically political assassinations. It's a banana republic. There's a lot of collateral damage. It's just an absolute bedlam. Right. in Colombian history at that time during the 80s under Pablo Escobar. We could be somewhere between a Brazil and a Colombia, right? With nukes. You know? This is where things are looking like. And I think the Brazilian possibility is looking to be the better option in comparison to Colombia in the 80s, you know? So that's the thing that I thought about. I don't know what you guys think about that, but it's a real reality, you know?
Yeah, I think the hard thing to see with all that is with some of the stuff that is going to change with new generations and certain attitudes there. I think there's going to be a lot of the stuff that's happened in my lifetime where we're like pumping the brakes, if not actively trying to reverse it. And I don't think it's going to be because we changed it through the system and we follow every little like rule of law, like due process, all this other stuff where it's just, look, I understand why people say it's a dangerous precedent to start putting the military in certain cities and this and that. But at the end of the day, right, if like the left and those people take power again, right, and it's not just right, you kind of look at what they've done over the last 20 years. People talk about, oh, what happens when the pendulum swings back? It's like, okay, you really want to keep going down the path of being the conservative, like that haven't conserved anything, right? And you kind of see where all that leads. It's just a mess. It's just a complete mess. They don't do right. They're always on defense. They don't play to win, and so we end up where we have all this bullshit with civil rights and DEI and all this other stuff. And now people are realizing, hey, that's a bad idea. And you have a bunch of conservatives, at least at the federal level, where it's like they're not going to do anything to stop it. So, I mean, I understand why people are uptight about like dropping the military into Chicago or LA or wherever, because what could be done in the future? It's like, well, look what's been done in the past. Like, you really want to like keep playing nice with these people?
You know, one of the things that we have to be fearful of with this whole militarization and this, that, and the other, that sword cuts both ways, right? If we put the legal precedent out there, you know, we know that there's going to be an autocrat rising. Here's the other thing that we haven't considered. Is the autocrat that's going to rise is going to be an autocrat that's going to be in our favor, or the autocrat is going to be slightly left of Mao?
I don't think America's wired to have a leftist authoritarian type take over. I don't think that's, I mean, I understand what people see and why that is, but I just think the odds of that happening are just so extremely low because the type of person you would need to have in charge. I think the way America is set up, I don't think it really lends itself to a left-wing authoritarian type, but that could just be my bias. But I think the other thing too is the most misused quote, or not quote, but opinion that I think is basically a load of crap is absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think when you really think about it and why I'm in favor of a monarchy system eventually, or something similar to it, I don't think it corrupts absolutely. I think it shows character, right, of what the people in charge are, right? If they're kind of upstanding people that want to see what's best for the country, right? I don't think having absolute power corrupts. Problem is, like, people are so used to our political types, and we know what they do with the current level of power. So giving them absolute power, even more than they already have, is just a terrible idea, right? But I think you kind of look at it and say, hey, if you get the right person in the driver's seat, right, you want to get that person as much power as possible. So, but yeah, it's one of those things where that's probably like a several hour conversation. I know that we don't have time just to rant on that indefinitely, but I did want to get into some stuff going on with financial markets. Yeah. And there's been talk of rate cuts and this and that and all this different kind of different narratives kind of happening all at the same time. Markets are doing a bunch of insane stuff. I don't know how closely you followed some of these like crypto treasury companies,
Sure.
and some of these different. I mean, it just looks like a terrible, terrible idea. But the market's going to keep pumping stuff like that until it can't. But I want to start actually with gold, and I'll pop my screen up here because I think that's like the like people talk about what the reserve asset is and what the what is the no risk or risk off asset. I think what gold is telling you right here is like knocking on 3,700. I mean, it's probably going to 4,000. Like, I'm not saying by the end of the year or anything, but if you're patient enough, it's going higher.
Hey, we're at Cowboy. Didn't I just say this about almost a year ago that by the fall going into winter of 2025, gold's gonna be knocking at 37 to 3,800. We're gonna be testing that $4,000.
Yeah, we both said that.
Yep, here we are.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it and right, if you had to go to sleep for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right, and you want to maintain your purchasing power over that period of time, it's like you should own gold, right? So if you kind of take that back into a more reasonable time frame of what happens over the next 5 or even 10 years, if you're like very long term by today's standards, right, I think everyone should own some gold, right? And I know, like, giving specific financial advice, I'm not here to say that you want to buy it after it's gone up 10% in like 2 or 3 weeks. What I am saying, owning zero gold is generally not a good idea if you understand history and where we are. So that's kind of my point on all that, where gold is like the reserve asset, no risk. I think that's where that's going to go. But I think silver is looking like, I'm not saying this thing's going to go parabolic, but when silver tends to move, it doesn't do it where it's like, oh, 1% here, 1% there. Like, it like really rips. And I'm no like expert chart guy, but you look at what happens if we're going like 50 plus, which I think we're not saying it by the end of the year. I think it's possible, but sometime in 2026, if we do start to see that big run, silver, I think, is going to go ballistic. And I don't know if you guys have some specific thoughts, right? It's really hard to chase after the move it's had from the bottom in April, but I just look at it as like, if you own it, now's not the time to be taking chips off the table. Like, I see people talking about, locking in some gains here, this and that. And it's like I own some physical. Like, there's no way. And this is part of the benefits of owning physical. There's pros and cons to it, but with the transaction costs and the spreads, you're not as tempted to get out and like overtrade it as you might be owning like a physical ETF or owning the miners, So I think gold and silver, I think silver probably outperforms gold for a little bit here, but we'll kind of see where it goes. The most oh my gosh, need to get the paid version of this so I can stop on that pop-up. The most interesting out of all the precious / industrial metals, in my opinion, is platinum. And right, flies 40% and then falls asleep here. I think there's I was reading someone's research a couple weeks ago, and they are expecting, I think it's $8,000 to $9,000 an ounce in the next like 2 to 3 years.
$8,000 to what?
$8,000 to $9,000 an ounce
On platinum?
Yep.
Yeah.
Which
absolutely.
is pretty aggressive on like the actual target side. But I think looking at like 5,000 an ounce,
I'm looking at 3,000 to 5,000
that's kind of my guess, where it's like 5,000 an ounce over a 3 to 5 year stretch when all this stuff like really starts to play out. Like, this is one thing I've been kicking around, talking to a couple of my subscribers, and they run funds, and they're poking me to take a run at launching a fund of my own, which would be kind of interesting, because if you have like a portfolio filled with like certain things that are basically considered misfit toys by the market, right, you can go and own, I think platinum ETF is going to be just have some absolutely face melting rallies. And if you can find a series of uncorrelated but sizable bets on events or companies or special situations. I think there's stuff out there where it's like, hey, like platinum is really one of the most asymmetric trades out there, right? I like businesses and certain things as well, but you don't even have operating risk. And the operating risk that you do have from the existing platinum miners is in South Africa. And if that turns into a shit show, the platinum you already have is going to be worth more, right? That only contributes to the supply deficits we already see. So that's kind of the look at precious metals, where it's like you see all these things starting to move. Platinum's gone to sleep for like a couple months now after a huge rally, but I still look at it as, again, not specific advice for anyone listening. Don't get mad at me if it goes from 1380 to 1300 next week. But if your time frame is more on the 12 months and out time frame, I think just the upside in platinum is absurd here. So I don't know if you guys have specific thoughts on that, but right, I kind of look at it as like, hey, you're looking at a combination of several different factors, and there aren't many places where it's like, yeah, I can pretty reasonably pencil like a triple over the next 3 to 5 years with pretty low risk as far as, hey, it's not an operating business and it's not going to be subject to certain things that are going to create massive issues, right? It's like, hey, you own the physical metal. Like that's pretty conservative as far as risk goes, in my opinion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the other stuff, I don't know if you guys have paid attention to this at all. The EIA or IEA, whichever on the alphabet soup, energy agencies put out their kind of report on oil and gas, CapEx, all this other stuff. And it's pretty interesting because these agencies are very political. And so they're not never, but they very rarely say anything bullish on oil or gas.
Yeah, it was usually you want to listen to like what OPEC says about, future oil demand rather than the IEA.
Well, someone had a tweet on that in 2014, the two IEA, EIA came in like 1 or 2 million barrels a day lower than OPEC demand. I think OPEC demand for 2024, their estimate was, I think, 102 million or something. And then actual demand for 2024 is like 2 million barrels a day higher than OPEC's. So like the high estimate, which people were probably laughing about at the time, that turned out to be low, right? And so there are certain things where you can look at these things, but like this is the first report that I remember seeing from them where they're talking about what happens without additional CapEx and spending. And this is another chart from my friend Wilson over at HFI Research. But basically, even if you're spending a lot of money on CapEx, we're not going to be growing production, especially current prices, in a massive way. But you have decline rates somewhere to the tune of, I don't know, 7 or 8% on a global scale. Like you're losing, I think, 8 million barrels a day, roughly, each year if you don't invest in new production. And most of the investment that's been going into it, I think they put in that 90% of all spend over the last 10 years has just been to maintain existing production. And so we'll kind of see where this goes, but this is the first report they've kind of put out where they kind of had some interesting charts and all this stuff. And maybe I can send, I'll send Nick a link to that so you guys can maybe drop it in the chat or something, or the link below if you guys want to take a look at that.
For it. If you just send me a link and
I'll do it after this kind of checkpoint here. The last thing that got from a friend who had on the podcast recently, Rob from over at Crude Chronicles. If you kind of look at what happens with credit cycles and monetary growth and all these other factors, it tends to oil tends to follow these things pretty closely, and that kind of, at least from what I can tell, is telling you that oil in the 60, 65, $70 a barrel range doesn't make a ton of sense. And there's other stuff with inventories, and he is some great research. And this was the last thing I wanted to hit on with oil was apparently like those drone attacks, they've been hitting refineries, they've been hitting certain things, infrastructure, where, right, the whole idea that there's plenty of oil out there as far as where it's going to come from. Like, there's only so much you can do if you start taking out refineries and pipelines because of what's going on in Eastern Europe, right? And there's only so much the U.S. can do to produce at $60, $65, $70 a barrel when they're already squeezing suppliers and oil field service guys to where there's not much room left to squeeze those guys. Like, I was talking to a guy. He's also invested in my favorite misfit child of a portfolio investment. But I was talking to him. He sold 2 oil field service companies, and he said, like, the big producers, Exxon's, Chevron's, all the big guys in Texas, they're going to continue to squeeze the oil field services guys, the onshore guys, because they basically, like, all these stocks look cheap, but they can continue to basically run them over. So it's a tough business to be in, but the count your wealth and rolls of Charmin. Nice. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but I don't know. Maybe we'll all end up with bidets like Europe or whatever. But no, I look at some of the stuff going on in the energy world, and you see, like, I was talking to one of my subscribers last night who has sold multiple E&P companies for oil and gas, and mostly not in Texas, from my understanding, but has some very interesting investment ideas and different things we talked about. But they kind of got into, hey, there's a lot of stuff where, like, the oilfield services guys, they're hurting with oil where it is, and they're not catching a break from any of the big guys as far as the producers. And so I think there's going to be a point where, like, none of these companies make any money. So it's just like you start to see rig capacity go down. You start to see the equipment get scrapped. All these different things that are going to happen. I think it's a very interesting setup here for some of the energy sector, and it's still, I think, very, very out of favor. So that's kind of one of the last things I wanted to wrap up with on markets, and we can kind of take it for wherever you guys want to go from there. But between the precious metals, like what's going on there at the breakout, and what's going on with the energy, I look at it as, like, there's a lot of interesting things going on. Certain things are priced in the market. Certain things the market is ignoring or being too hopeful on. But I think energy is definitely not one of those places where there's a ton of optimism moving forward.
Well, if you're talking about a squeeze, I mean, that would be like a squeeze up, right? So when you look back through history at energy, never has an old energy been taken off, right? What I mean by that is, like, we're still using freaking peat, and we're using it as much as we ever did. So they find this new energy, and you're like, oh, we can stop using XYZ. No, we don't. We never have, probably never will. And those other energies actually only increase. You know, something like peat probably at minuscule amounts of increased production, but it is what it is. So even if we were to discover, you know, some way to make solar make sense, or, you know, because all this green energy doesn't do anything. It's not cost effective. You know, if you just want to cause a bunch of price inflation, then shit. I mean, if you want to just destroy everything, just stop using hydrocarbons. So if there is going to be a squeeze, that squeeze would be up. And you're going to see a higher value in commodities, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if there are enough resources out there that are easily tappable, that, you know, we already have access to or could have access to soon, for the U.S. to stay competitive in the hydrocarbon market. Aside from natural gas, we're good with CNG. We're great, but with oil, I mean, there's a question for you. Like, I made to understand that the Permian is starting to get kind of tapped out for now. I mean, what's the opinion on that? Does the Permian still have a lot more to go before we need to really consider Alaska?
So I'm not in the camp that we're gonna run out of oil, because
Not run out. I'm not talking about run out.
I think that that's the oversimplified version of like the Malthusian view that like there's peak oil, we're never gonna be able to rely on it again because we're running out. There's plenty of oil out there. I don't think there's plenty of oil to be had that can be profitably developed at $70 a barrel. And that's where you get into, well, what does it take to really invest in Alaska? What does it take to ramp production in the Permian and all these different things? It's like you're pushing closer to $100 a barrel to really make that pencil for a lot of those places. And eventually it is like a resource that depletes, right? So no matter how much you invest in it, right, one day the Permian will hit peak production and it will produce less oil and less gas, even though, or actually, I guess let's focus on oil, less oil over time. And so when you look at the Permian specifically, I think it produces, 3 to 4 barrels of water for every barrel of oil that it produces. And you you start to look at where that heads as far as, hey, each well is producing more gas, like the gas to oil ratio is increasing, all these different things. Is generally not something you see when you're going to be getting a ton of oil out of that field and increasing amounts over the next, call it couple of years, really. So I think Alaska is an option. I think there's spots in California. My conspiracy theory about California and their oil is that it's basically the second less well-known strategic petroleum reserve, where if oil prices is basically break glass in case of $200 a barrel, because there's plenty of oil in California in certain spots. It's just they made it almost impossible to go and extract it. So I think that's the thing, is the political narrative and some of these different things change around oil if prices start to really go up. And the actual economic viability of what's in Alaska, what's in parts of the Permian, we haven't really, from my understanding, we haven't really even explored parts of the East Coast. And if you look at some of these offshore deposits, you can find massive resources, right? So it takes a long time to develop them. And if you're in a boardroom of some of these companies, they'll laugh you out of the room if you try and convince them to spend billions of dollars in 5 or 10 years to go from zero to producing an offshore asset. But once you get one of those up and running, they just print cash. So, right, if you're trying to invest countercyclically, like that's exactly what you'd be doing. But at the same time, there's a lot of reasons that the companies are not going to go out on a limb and basically bet that oil is going to move higher. But we'll kind of see where it goes. My kind of long-winded rant there is just basically saying, I think we can find enough oil. I don't know if it's going to be at $70 a barrel, right? Could be 80, 90. I think oil eventually goes a lot higher, mostly because gold and other things are going to act like gravity on other commodity prices. But that's kind of my view, is where markets do weird things for a certain amount of time, but over a longer period, like the fundamentals start to play out. And so that's kind of thing, is like we don't have the geology where it's you pop a straw in the ground and out pops like gushers, right? You used to see in California or parts of Texas, where it's like incredible the amount of oil some of these things produce. Like I was talking to Rob from Crude Chronicles recently, and he said in the 50s, when they were like getting things up and running in Saudi Arabia, they had single wells producing 6,000 barrels a day. And now, like in the Permian, I think average wells are like producing, was it like 100 barrels a day, somewhere in there? So over time, you're going to see like the resources are not as prolific. So that's kind of my general thoughts on that. But where it goes from here, or when, is really, really tough to figure out. But I think it's inevitable. It's just a matter of how long does it take and where do where do we go from there? You know, so my guess is not $50 a barrel is the way I'll put it.
No, I can
You
see
know,
that. 70
I'm
to 80
investing
is a good
in.
range.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I said
What's
70
that?
to 80 is a very logical range.
Well, yeah, you know, I keep hearing that you're not going to hear a lot of ramp up of production below 80. So they're just not interested in it. But I've decided to invest in diesel powered windmills. That's where my money is going. So, and what this is a really good investment, guys. Totally financial advice. Right?
I'm investing into diesel powered electric cars.
Diesel powered electric cars.
Yeah.
Yep. No, they got these windmills, and I guess they were using diesel to spin them. Is that? Am I not? Did I hear that correctly? Did anybody else hear about this?
I have not heard
I
that.
have no idea, man.
Yeah, I've heard that they
First time I'm
needed
hearing
to, you know, they needed to make it look like something was actually happening, so they started powering the windmills. I don't know. All I can say is,
Are you yanking my chain right now? Or are you
no. There's
serious?
there's something out there.
You're actually being serious.
No, yeah, I don't know if they had to use diesel to like somehow make them work better. I don't know if it was. Let's see if it diesel power.
That's actually so funny. That's so.
Let me
Sheesh,
see if
man.
I can find it here. There are claims on social media, but apparently 71, and this is actually in February 2023 that did happen. 71 turbines in Scotland were temporarily connected to diesel generators due to a grid fault. But this was for emergency maintenance, not to power the turbine's operation. They were used to prevent ice buildup on the blades while the turbines were offline, not to generate electricity or spin the blades. No, look, they're still going. Oh boy. Oh boy. Yeah, I was in Scotland, and they're claiming that they were selling their electricity to other places, but I don't know, man. I mean, I used to live near a huge amount of windmills in California, out in the Coachella Valley. And those things are always being worked on, and I know everything's being worked on, you know. But I think we could top it off with this. You know, Ben, you gotta, you know, the ratio of, like, you know, let's just say electric's 1-to-1, and, you know, I think you said hydrocarbons are like 30-to-1 when it comes to efficiency, when it comes to, I think it's either dollars or units of energy that it takes to pull, like, take the energy out of the environment and transmit it. Like, do you remember those numbers?
Are you talking about like energy return on energy invested? Or
Yeah, I think that's it.
So the nuclear is the highest or most efficient, where I think it's like 100-to-1 or some for uranium. I think thorium is even more than that, but oil and natural gas are like 30 or 40-to-1, and that depends on the actual well resource. Solar and wind, I mean, basically, if you look at solar and wind from beginning to end, they consume more than they produce as far as resources, energy, materials. Like the whole idea that we can make battery powered cars that are good for the environment, when you look at what happens at some of these open pit mines to produce the batteries, is just, it's dumb. So
Yeah.
all this stuff is basically a grift, and just because it doesn't produce emissions of the tailpipe, it doesn't mean there's no emissions in the process. So,
Well, yeah, hence, you know, if he's comment about the coal powered electric cars.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's, you know, that's the thing about the reason I like this show is because Ben comes with actual data, and it's, you know, sure, we definitely want to cover what's going on politically, but if you're not looking at the numbers, then you're going to be missing out on what's actually going to happen. And of course, you know, we don't know the future, but I don't know. Then you make a pretty good case for hydrocarbons going up in price for better or for worse, right? Whether it's, you know, just the cost of production as opposed to the availability of oil, right?
yeah, I mean, I think there's the way I'll put it is, if you actually look at the cost right now, like everyone sees $3 a gallon, $4 a gallon at the gas pump, whatever it is, 5, 6 if you're in California, and it seems like, oh, that's not that cheap. And then you look at the price of everything else, and it is extremely cheap, like about as cheap as it's ever been compared to gold, compared to S&P. Like, you can compare it to other assets, and if you look at the long term, like what happens to oil and commodities and all this other stuff, there's a huge portion of it that is not actually the thing getting more expensive or less expensive. It's baked into it by the devaluation of the currency, right? By the debasement. And so, right, if oil goes to $100 a barrel, right, it's going to fluctuate wildly while it does it. But how much of that is currency debasement? How much of that is, hey, we haven't invested enough in production over the last 5 years, right? There's going to be a combination of factors that I think drives oil much higher, but there is a huge part of it that has to do with what we actually measure the commodities in, right? So it's not just the underlying arguments of, hey, we're not investing enough in capex, and oil that has good returns at $70 a barrel is getting harder to find, and costs are going up the Permian. Like, there's going to be a huge component of is, hey, the money that we value and trade some of these goods in is becoming worth less over time.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing is, like, there are going to be certain investments and that protect you from inflation and protect you from the debasement. I would point out that it's generally not going to be cash, not going to be bonds. Is it going to be S&P at 30, 35 times earnings? Whatever it's at right now. I haven't looked lately, but at that valuation, I don't like, I have a hard time making a fundamental case. Like, it's all based on flows and narrative and passive indexing and kind of number go up, right? But can you find certain stocks out there, whether it's international or in the US, where it's like, hey, this thing's trading at 5 times earnings, it pays a good dividend? Like, there's different strategies for different people, and maybe it's like certain special situations, maybe it's some of these different things. But I think actually looking at the value of something is a lot of, like, a big chunk of the market has forgotten to buy something for what it's actually worth, and not just because they think it's going up tomorrow or next week or next month or in the next 12 months. So
yeah,
that's kind of my old man yelling at clouds rant on market structure. But it'll change eventually. I don't know when, but that's kind of why I think it would be interesting to take a run at doing some of these things and working with other investors on it. So, yeah.
Very well said. And folks, we're at the end of the show. Ben, thank you for joining us and bringing this data and information to light to the audience for us. And guys, you can find Ben over at Kelleran's Corner. Links are all in the description box. With that being said, Cowboy, take it away.